Hey, buddy.
Hello, mate. Can you hear me all right?
Hi, Doug. Yes, I can. We both got the little facial hair here, don't we?
It's because we're both sexy as fuck. We sort of like mature with age, like a fine wine. So
That's right.
it's,
Are you Australian or South African or something?
I've got a weird accent, haven't I? But no, I'm just British in Northamptonshire.
Northamptonshire. Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
Where is
thank,
that? Is that north of London?
yeah, yeah. So London's about an hour on the train from here.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're based up there.
Yeah, Northamptonshire. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I really
Sure,
appreciate
yeah.
it. And I've seen you for a while. And it's weird because in preparing for this, I was like watching some of your videos and looking at some of your stuff. And it's weird because you're kind of like stalking somebody before you actually get to meet them. It's
Yes.
very bizarre. And like this is the first time we're chatting. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And there's
Oh,
so much I
no.
want to say, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. So I'm trying to condense a lot down into a very finite, you know, conversation. Is there anything that you would like to talk about before I get started?
Not really. I enjoy coming on these occasionally and chatting with folks who have my perspective's changed. Obviously, I'm 47 now, and I was out there running around in my late 20s. So, and you were so courteous and polite. That's the British etiquette there, and so I couldn't refuse
Thank you
the
very much.
invitation. So I'm curious about what your brand and what you're about in terms of are you commercializing this a bit, or is this a long-term hobby or fascination of yours? And what's your, because you're also advanced in age a bit, right? So what's your angle? I mean, you're not 20, so what's
Apparently
the,
not.
for you, what's the perspective, I guess?
I thought this may happen. I thought, you know what? I'm going to get my questions together. And you're just like me. You're such a curious person. You're like me and a friend of mine have a thing like curiosity over judgment. Don't judge someone. Just
Mm.
be curious of them. Find out more about them so that you can learn something and adapt, as opposed to labeling and disabling something. And I thought this is where I said I think we could just go on for a long time in terms of like question upon question, because we're kind of feeling each other out because we've never spoke before. How much of it, I mean, I think a better question would be not to avoid your question, but what is your perception? Because I used to be a magician, and
Oh, wow.
I used to show someone like magic. I've got that's another YouTube channel I've got. I used to show people magic tricks. I did that for like 20, 25 years. And so it
Oh,
didn't really matter what I thought the trick was. It only mattered what the audience said. Or with business, you could say it's what the market says. Or in dating, you'd say it was if girls are fucking you or not. So it's sort of like, what is your perception from the channel so far of this behind closed doors that I've set up? What does it come across to you as? And then I'll try and say what I was trying to do with it. But I want to see how it comes across to you first from what you've
well, to
seen.
be honest, I don't have. I know you sent me a link. I think I popped on it quickly, but I figure we just get to know each other real without a lot of uh, preliminary work. Also, the truth is, I'm quite removed from this. I have other business. I teach exams I'm a teacher, and I'm actually applying to law school. So I've been working on that to go down the legal route. So this is a legacy business that I touch here and there, but I don't usually get immersed in. But
Hmm.
it's fun to sort of pop out once in a while and talk about it like this. And I do still make money on various brands I have, but um, I wouldn't be able to tell you what the landscape is or who the players are really. I do. A friend of mine I know, there's a lot of aggregation from a business standpoint, and a friend just told me that a mutual friend of ours, that he's head of a company, he's doing all their email marketing. They've just been buying up all the sort of the residual players in the space, because there was a, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a shakeout a few years ago. There was, the game came out and my stuff came out like mid 2000s, and it was all great, and then basically the Me Too, it ran for a long time, and all these players came into space. Then there was the Me Too movement. There was that guy Julian Blanc, was that his name, who
Yeah,
like got,
from RSD.
he choked someone or something, and there was a big like pushbacks. Everyone got, I was well out of it at that time as far as like practicing this stuff, but um so there's been some convulsions in the market, and then a lot of people have gotten out, like RSD. I don't think they sell product, or they do
Self-help.
lifestyle
Yeah.
only. So I think a lot of people have gone away. Some people have died who were prominent in this thing,
Tom
Tom
Torero. Yeah.
Guerrero and others. And and also another big marketer as well died. And so I don't know what the current state of is, but I know that the people looking to make money have sort of picked up some of the pieces, and there's always, you know, profiteers out there. But so I wouldn't be, and I wouldn't know where your brand sits in the space and what. So that maybe that's more my question is, are you new to the space? You've been around quite a while, and
I think I've got more of a kind of like, what's the word, like more overall view of it, because I mean the reason why I called it behind closed doors as opposed to Doug's dating and tried to sell myself as a dating coach, or Dougie D'Angelo or whatever. So
Dougie D.
it's yeah, Dougie D. Um, I think for me, it's more about relationships. I'm more interested in relationships between things, whether that's, you know, male or female, whether it's in business. It's kind of like, because I think you've got the three niches, which is health, wealth, and relationships. And I think that relationships are the most important thing because we're all eventually going to lose our health. You know, and we're
You
going
talking
to,
about what people sell online?
sorry, yes, yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
also in life
Yeah,
in
that's
general. You know, we only have so
health,
many hours
wealth.
in a day. We have to make money in order to be able to get to do things. You know, why are we making the money? Well, it's usually because we want to live long and be healthy, and we want our children to live long and be healthy and have a good, healthy support system and a family in place. And I think a lot of the things that are in place at the moment is like destruction of the family home, and there's an attack on masculinity, and that affects children, also affects women. There's a certain amount where the feminist movement has hurt women to the degree to which it's helped them. And it's sort of like I'm really intrigued by relationships because I think for me, out of all the bits that I've done with it, and I managed to get to do what I wanted to do. I always wanted to be like a magician. You know, you see David Copperfield, I was like, I want to be that guy, kind of a thing. And so I was lucky to be able to do the things that I wanted to do to make money for a living. And I had a really great, easy, fun time of it. And nowhere was near as rewarding as having a family and children. And so the things that I thought that I wanted as a young man, all the things that I wanted to attain in terms of status and all that kind of stuff, all the things that you're kind of sold on, you realize the illusion of it after a while. You think, oh, that's just to get me to the next stage. And there's different stages of life. And that's one of the things I like about your products is that you've really kind of like I've just made some notes of it. I don't want to get it wrong. Is it Papa to Playboy?
Yeah,
Um,
Playboy to Papa. No, it's not.
Playboy
Yeah,
to Papa,
that
sorry.
direction would be funny, going from Papa to Playboy. No, I've gone from a Playboy to a Papa. But the
I've done it the other way around.
oh, have you?
Back, I had my first job when I was 25. And
Oh,
so, and then
interesting.
went through all the family court stuff and lost everything. And this is where I kind of want to really speak to you about. And I've got really three questions I'd like to ask you because, but just coming back to
Before you
your
ask me
question,
that, can I just make a comment? Because you said something interesting.
certainly.
I think part of the reason young guys get disillusioned is they're sold certain advice, which is maybe age appropriate, but we outgrow that advice. The thing is, I think one of the big and again, I am not so current on the stuff, but one of the problems with the whole dating market and the pickup PUA market and all that was that it sold a set of paradigms that worked for young guys, but it doesn't carry you into your late 30s or 40s and into your 50s and 60s. In other words, like I think the best one way to measure success in life is the person who's able to adapt to the properly to each decade of their life. And it takes such different tools. You can see that because people who are like awkward and nerdy and never got the girl, maybe they studied, they would maybe have a lousy teens and 20s, but then when they come in their own professionally and they're sort of settled and they're good guys, they might have a nice family and a good career in their 40s and 50s. So whereas like the hunky bad boy had a cool teens and 20s, but kind of petered out or got, or died or got washed up. So it's kind of like, I think if you want to ride the wave until old age, you have to learn how to, I mean, I'm not saying anything new, but it's kind of, I think it's important to adapt to each decade as life changes and your needs change and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's where I see a lot of the young guys that used to run around chasing girls. I think they got stuck and they
Yes.
never could evolve, or they didn't realize that they were playing they were playing a role for a period, and then when they at a certain point when they're tired of it, get off the carousel and move to the next chapter. And so
You've got to
I
level
just see
up.
a lot of some of the men and guys I knew from the space and the personality, a lot of them got kind of stuck in this sort in a certain, it's not a good look if you keep doing this. Something that works when you're 25 might not work when you're 50, you know.
Yeah, because you look at Hugh Hefner and Madonna, for example, like they're trying to stay perpetually in that frame. And I
Mm.
watched an interview with Jordan Peterson recently where he spoke the same thing with feminism. It's kind of like you teach women this, but you're not teaching them that the career is everything and they can put off having children. But, you know, nature doesn't allow for that after a certain age, you know, because
Mm.
you have the menopause and all that. They've got a finite amount of time in order to be able to get their act together. And if you don't have children into later life, there are some women that can do without it because, you know, they really do love their careers or they're just not that way inclined. But most women do want to have children. And so, because else you're going to be very lonely after 40, especially as your parents like pass away. And like people don't think about the second half of their life. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I kind of like your approach, because you've got a very holistic viewpoint to it and you've mastered every area. Because when you look at your life, like you just said, every new decade, like you were in Boston for 9 years, then you're in New York for 9 years, and now you've been in London for like over 10 years. So you've kind
Mm.
of like put, and you've set, you seem to me like somebody that sets up the circumstances where you decide what you want and then you set up the circumstances to get what you want, if that makes sense, so that the system does a lot of the work. Like when you moved to New York, and you were there, you know, financially but also for women, and it's sort of like, you know, it's the environment a lot of the time that produces the habits, that produce the behaviors, that produce the success. And so
That's true.
sometimes people just don't find themselves in the correct environment.
I will say though, I appreciate that. Is that some of it's luck? I mean, in that I found myself in good circumstances but I think my role, or where I've done well in some, I've tried to report back to men and to people like that after having gone through a lucky phase, like, okay, New York's a great place to be single because I lived there. So I've done a good job as a journalist, sort of reporting after the fact. But I wouldn't take too much credit. I've sort of fallen in some ways into these things, but I have had my wits about me. But like I when I moved to New York, I wasn't moving there for the dating opportunities per se, but once I recognized those and capitalized on them, then I made a business and I did report back on how good it was, and I took advantage of it. So I had my eyes open, but I wasn't necessarily, it wasn't all pre-planned. There was luck involved. Some people,
Right.
just to say to some guys who are trapped or unlucky, it's not their fault necessarily. So I don't
So
take full credit for my trajectory.
So it's not like you decided in advance, but retrospectively looking back, you decided that, yeah, New York was probably the best time given the circumstances, for
Yeah, yeah,
example, for
yeah.
this success that you had. So that brings me on to my first question now. So
Go ahead. Yeah.
what does success look like for you now at this stage in your life? Like, what's
Mm.
your kind of goal and what are you looking to do now at this stage? Because this is the sort of like, because I've seen many interviews with the people that you've done with other people like Kezia and John Anthony and all the other guys and stuff, and you talk very much about the New York period of your life, and there's loads of other stuff that for people that don't know who you are, you've like been to Harvard and you're like you've done a lot. You're very eclectic, which is what I like because you haven't got stuck in that rut that you were talking about, where and you have it with magicians as well. That's why I had to move out of magic, because people just want to keep learning. They get addicted to the next trick, or in dating, they get addicted to the next girl. And a lot of the times, like with the game, when the book The Game came out, again, this is why I respect you more than a lot of the other guys. They're all trying to become something akin to you. Like you're actually out there doing it and being that guy. They're all putting on hats and doing all these things and trying to microanalyze with not taking enough action. And you kind of integrated the two. So it
Mm.
became a very sort of like you got like the education and the experience and you kind of put them to work for you. So that's good. You kind of like hit the nail on the head. And I think that's why a lot of other people in the community now respect you and like you're an OG, because it's sort of like, and you were doing it all before the internet, which is very impressive. But like, to talk about that phase of your life now, but like coming to the present moment, what is it that you're looking to achieve now and what you would like to do for the future? Because you seem to be able to do whatever you put your mind to, whether that's through luck or through, you know, your own skills and
Mm.
talents.
Also, it's just on that point, it's the kind of like circumstances change. So it's about knowing when the time is right and seizing it. There's different ways to read my life story too. I mean, you've read it in a sympathetic way, which I appreciate, but there's other things that someone could say, oh, you should have done this, or I missed the boat on this and that. Anyhow, um, for me today, I mean, family, I have a daughter and a wife. Like, family is center of that. We'd like to have another kid, perhaps even, maybe, I don't know. My wife's younger. One of the things that was calculated is that I when I realized I was ready, I wanted to settle down, or I was on the lookout for a partner, um, I I mean, I got lucky as well, but my wife is 13 years younger than I am, so that does increase. You talked about feminism and the fertility window. We have more of a fertility window than, because I'm 47. If my wife was 47, we'd be done pretty much, you know. So it's like, but we have a chance for one or two more kids if we're so lucky. Um, so family is pretty much front and center. Um, I have a variety of businesses that keep me active. I think professionally, that's why I mentioned law school. I'm in the process of, I have applied, and if I'm accepted on that, I'll probably, there's a second career in me in terms of advocacy, and so basically take some of these skills of rhetoric and reasoning and persuasion and use them in a legal framework where I can earn a proper living and be intellectually stimulated and care, because I'll be 50 soon, and the idea is like, I try to think about like the, you know, the next phase, like from 50 to 75 basically, or retirement. Like, what do I want to be doing? What is my life? My energy levels are less than they were. But it'll mostly be about raising my family and trying to maintain a harmonious and productive relationship with my wife. That always takes work, you know, marriage. And then yeah, maybe start this second career.
So could
And
you
I'm coming
elaborate a
to,
bit more on that, please? The second career, because I didn't. I was listening to what you're saying, but I didn't fully. I haven't got a picture in my mind of what that would look like for you.
which one, about a harmonious family life?
No, that bit. The second career. Sorry.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
just the, I think because I do a number of things now. I'm an entrepreneur. I own these various dating businesses. We also own some real estate. I own quite a successful, lucrative educational business that I teach in. But those things, I think, all have plateaued a bit, and I'm looking for a next challenge, something that's novel, but also uses my life experience and my education in, from let's say the age of 50, which I'll be in a couple of years, until I retire.
Hmm.
And so, and the law is something that I can come to late, and I have some friends helping me to basically get a legal education and try to practice law.
What type of law would you like to look at?
It's early days yet, so I don't know exactly, but I'm going through the qualification process. And if I do that, I'd love to be a barrister to argue in front of
Well,
a judge, you know.
this beautifully brings me on to my next point. Because like I said, we're you know got half an hour here. I want to get in as much as I can. Is the family law and the family court, because I don't know what you know about it, but I mean,
Pretty
I don't know.
punitive for men. I know it's really tough. In fact, just on that note, I have a good friend who's British, funny enough, but he lives in New York. I know him. I met him in New York, but he's from London. Um, and he's quite educated, but decided, and so he got very he's quite resourceful and got really stuck into the family law situation, because he, I don't want to get too much background and get distracted, but basically he had two children with different women, but never got married, didn't want to get married, wanted his sexual freedom. So he never wanted to make the commitment of marriage, but he wanted to have children. And the first one, it worked out. They had an understanding. The second woman, it didn't work out. And then when it all kind of fell apart, she wanted custody. And so he ended up learning, teaching himself US family law. And now he's an advocate. He's not an attorney, but he runs a nonprofit and does advocacy for men in New York State and city who have acrimonious breakups and custody battles. Because again, I don't know any detail, but in general, I know the US, probably the UK too, is very unfavorable to men when they break up in a marriage with all that stuff.
It's unfavorable to men, but with parental alienation and stuff, it's also unfavorable to children because the feelings of the applicant, which is the female, takes priority over the welfare of any children. And the welfare of the children is based on housing. So when they want to destroy, so I mean, it's again, this is where I'm like, brings me on to my last question. Like, what would you do if, because the way that everything works at the moment, and I don't want to make this personal, I'm just talking about this as in general, but like, so this is hypothetical, but let's say you're married and you've got your children or your child and you're set up, and the wife says, you know what, I don't want this anymore. I'm going to get rid of him. He can't see the children. I'm taking the house. I'm going to get 20% of his wages. And if he wants to see the children, you can pay £60 an hour to see them. And that's the going rate. And the whole system is
Why do you
set.
have that? That's interesting. You have to pay to see the kids, the
Yeah.
60? How does that work?
The family breakdown, because we live in a service-based economy, is worth like 50 billion a year, and it grows by a billion every year, even through recessions and everything. So it's yeah, so they're contact centers. So you can pay different rates depending on what service that you get. But in the same
Oh, and
way
there's
that
like a chaperone or someone's watching,
yeah,
so
yeah, they're
you
in
don't.
these halls. So yeah, if you type in like the National Association of Contact Centers, something like that, there's different rates depending on what you can have handovers. Because essentially what
But
they
so
say,
basically, a third party has to be present. Is that
yeah,
why you're paying for it?
and they have to take notes and they have to be submitted to court because children don't get to decide what they want. And the women's rights have really not just overpowered the men's rights and responsibilities, but they've also overpowered children's rights to want to see not just their parent, but their grandparents. You know, it really devastates the whole family based on one person's feelings. And the way that they do it is there's a four-stage process. I'll just briefly go through the scam, the family court scam, where and the judges, the barristers, the solicitors, the lawyers, the contact center people, like everybody makes money on this. So this is why they don't want, and everybody wants to keep their jobs, so they stick to the rules. A bit like with the old coronavirus thing. It's sort of like nobody wants to get into trouble, so everybody puts on the mask and does this and taps the head and does what's required and plays the game. And so yeah, they do it based. They do a non-molestation order, then they do an occupation order to get the house, then they do a child arrangements order, then they do a prohibited steps order, and that's the parental alienation order. And so, and one order leans on the other. So, and it's all based on molestation. And molestation is anything that the applicant finds convenient or inconvenient or annoying. And it's a very vague, undefined term. So if a woman goes into court, say the man goes out to work, for example, the woman will go in, get a same day ex parte non-molestation order, come back with the order, doesn't need any evidence. It's all the fact that she wrote it down that she's afraid of something, or you may do something, or she's concerned about your mental health because you've been on Prozac, or whatever it may be, or I'm worried he may do this. They'll give a same day order, and then she'll go back to the house, stick the key in the door, change the locks or whatever, so he can't get back into his own house at the end of the day. Phone the police if he attempts to get in to his own house, and she's got the order in place. And then, because there's no evidence required, then you have a hearing in 2 weeks. In that time, it's an arrestable offence, so you can go to jail for up to 5 years. It's such a, if you live with a woman, it's a very dangerous position to be in. And that's the family court. And then on the criminal side, anything can be considered as coercive controlling behavior, because you don't have to hit a girl, you can just disagree with her, and that can be considered emotional abuse. So at any time where
I understand.
and this
I mean,
is where, sorry to just tie this up, this is where you have the MGTOWs and the incels and the manosphere and all that kind of stuff. And I don't like to dwell too much on that, but it is a reality. And I'm like, how can we create a better family environment? Because I honestly think that families and children, and like you just said a minute ago, having an environment for success and like focusing on your family, it's like a really important thing for men. Do you know what I mean? And it's sort of like, and it is for children. And I really believe in the family home. And I think that life throws us there's so much pain and suffering, and we really need a strong family around us. We all do. Everybody benefits by helping and being cooperative. And I think this kind of like this attack on the family home from a legal standpoint isn't very good for anybody, even though it's profitable and it's good for the economy, you know, by separating
yeah.
parents from their children.
Oh, I mean, I don't think anyone would, or very few people would say it's good. I think you're right. There's vested interests, and people make money, and so when parties are bitter and angry, they do crazy things, and they maybe don't think about the long-term consequences. I don't have an answer for that, except that the only thing a man can control is he can try to screen the woman extensively before entering into those and see how she responds. I mean, not in a manipulative way, but just know her character well enough when she's under duress or unhappy to see what type of levers she pulls. Because you could maybe, if someone draws ultimatums or threatens in the dating, when in the first phase when you're dating her, or I mean, it's not gender specific, a man can do the same thing, but this type of behavior where it's using power to get what you want, if there's some alarming red flags when you're dating, maybe the guy should project, well, when the stakes are high and we have children and there's a family house and she gets pissed off, is she likely to pull the lever again? Like, is she the type to do that, or is she the type to realize that that anger will pass, and that, you know, couples have tough moments, and she doesn't want to blow up the whole everything you've created together. I mean, that's not a great answer, but basically a lot of it comes down to the type of people who are willing to go to the line on stuff like that versus other people who are more see the bigger picture and more accommodating and realize, okay, this, I'm not getting what I want right now, but like we do have. It's very sad to hear, you know, people when it comes to the point where the knives are out, figuratively speaking, and it's like, I'm going to do everything to ruin this person and prevent him from seeing his kid because I hate him so much. And also the man, maybe, I don't know what in the hypothetical, maybe the guy did something unforgivable, but or vice versa. But I just I think ultimately for two people to live together in some harmony for a long time, they both have to be well-adjusted, good communicators. They have to appreciate what's at stake. They have to know when to pull their punches, like even when they're angry, not to cross certain lines. Like this is crazy. This like same day non-cohabitation order or whatever. Like these kind of levels of aggression, you know, some people can be driven to those, or it's in their character to reach for those tools, and other people would never reach for those tools. So I don't know. But the fact that they're available is scary. Yeah.
That's my point. I'm not like, I mean, all this has happened to me, and that's why I know so much about it. But like, I'm not angry and bitter and resentful at my ex in any way whatsoever. It's a very bizarre thing. I'm angry and resentful at the system that allows for that behavior, in the same way that if there was a system for male aggression, because female aggression is reputation destruction, isn't it? It's sort of like innuendo, gossip. I mean, all the stuff that happened to Johnny Depp and all that kind of, you got Andrew Tate now, and you know, the Me Too campaign, and it's kind of like somebody can just say something and make it up and point the finger and your life's over. And then the male aggression is the physical, having a fight. You know, you got all that. I don't need to go into that. That's everybody knows what that is. And when men express aggression, there's kind of like there's the whole police and everything's in place to ensure that aggressive men go to jail, but there's nothing in place to prevent women from being aggressive, and they're encouraged to do it. And again, I know I'm using women. I know that it's both ways, but there's an asymmetry in the way in which people apply for these family court orders. And like women initiate like 90% of divorces, the more successful they are. So it's women leaving the marriages. Even when you're doing pickup, like you only get 10% success rate, 10, 11%. So you're working against the Pareto distribution at every single stage of the interaction. So in order to be able to get a girl in the first place, get it long term so you can identify those cues, make it work long time so that you can till death do us part. It's 10% here, 10% there, 10%. It's such a small chance of success.
Yeah.
And that's
no, look, I mean, yeah, a lot of relationships don't work out, a lot of marriages don't work out, and there's a lot at stake. You know, the innocent ones are the children, of course, as you say. One thing I wanted to say, I think the problem is that if I mean, I'm not, again, I'm not educated in this yet, but I think the problem is that the law caters to the lowest common denominator. So there will be a woman who's in such grave physical danger that she does need him out of the house. And so the law is designed to accommodate that lowest common denominator. And good. I mean, I don't want her to get killed necessarily. So like there are certain measures put. It's the same with incarceration in the States. Like, yeah, certain things are designed for incredibly dangerous criminals but like the problem is most people maybe aren't at that level of danger, or the woman,
but they're assumed
threatened, but she's not actually in real bodily jeopardy. And yet these tools are designed, and so they're the wrong tools. And so basically a lot of suffering ensues because they're not proportional to what the actual threat is or the actual problem. And maybe the problem could be resolved with therapy or communication or discussion or something. But they're reaching for these blunt tools, and everyone gets paid when someone picks up a hammer, right? So then hammers are used. So yeah, it's a
relationships are a delicate problem sometimes, and a hammer isn't the right way. And I don't think going through the law is the best way to resolve conflict. And again, everybody's incentivized to create conflict. The lawyers, the solicitor, everybody benefits. So it's sort of like the environment isn't necessarily a healthy one. And I think the solution to it is to have shared parenting in the law, like a shared parenting agreement. It's just a kind of de facto kind of like, obviously everyone's life is different, but just kind of, but they can't agree to it. They won't do it. So then everybody ends up fighting for that unnecessarily. So, and it's very sad.
Interesting you mentioned that to me, and that I'm at the very beginning of my legal journey. But I mean, I thought it, because I still coach men, usually men in their late 30s, early 40s, about who are thinking about getting married or thinking about getting married to a particular girl and they have misgivings or whatever, or guys who are still just playing the field. And so I talked to a lot of more mature men, given my age and my sort of my reputation, as you mentioned.
You've just
Given
got
that,
so
and
much
I am,
experience, mate. You've got so much experience in education. That's why you're so impressive, because you've really got a bird's eye view of things, and that's very rare. Because a lot of these other guys and coaches are very short-sighted, and that's why I respect you so much. Because when you're saying something, you're not just saying something carelessly and frivolously. It's a well thought out idea.
thank you. I appreciate that. It's nice to hear. But because of all that, I thought, what, the family law would be interesting, and also trying to see maybe to find some amicable resolution on stuff. And I don't know anything about the law, but I think one problem is it probably doesn't always attract the best. Well, it probably attracts some great minds, but like there's not a huge amount of money in it, really. When people think about being I mean, certain people can make money, yes, but like when I look at what I'm going to do, it's the same thing. I don't know if you know this, but criminal barristers, there's a huge exodus because they're not getting paid well. I mean, they spend all this on their education. They're highly educated, often from top schools, and then they go to defend criminals, and the criminals are broke, so they're on legal aid. And so you have this situation where these highly trained barristers are living on 15 or 20,000 pounds a year in London, which is a poverty wage. And so, whereas their peers are in corporate or tax law and they're earning $500,000 a year or something. So there's
And
a
it's what's
migration away
incentivized. Yeah.
from these things. So I think I'm interested in family law, and I will learn it, I think, as part of the module. But the idea is, like, is it a realistic place to make a living? I don't know the answer to that, but
If you don't mind me saying, I think that, like, just from I've looked at this myself because I wanted to get involved. I'm like, how could I do this? But I don't want to go through all the qualification process. The other thing you could look at doing, I'm not saying this for you, but it might be a night. It's just a suggestion. But I was looking at doing it for myself. Is and it's the place where you could make the most amount of change without having to get overly qualified or getting too theoretical about everything and worrying about the finances. Is being a Mackenzie friend. Have you heard of that at all?
no, Mackenzie friend.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can send you the information after our call if you like, and some links to and you can get the courses quite cheaply. There's one that's got a YouTube channel, and he was an ex-police officer, and he had to go to family court and represent himself, and he sells courses on it, and anyone can be a Mackenzie friend. So, and you can get a good, it's the same with coaching dating or any other business. It's what you make, or whether you're doing magic tricks, it's what you can make out of it. You could make like 20 grand a year, 100 grand a year, or you could be David Copperfield and make 50 million a year. So so if you've got the business skills, you could take something like a Mackenzie friend, help the most amount of people, and make a decent living out of it. And it could be something that'd be very gratifying and
Yeah, send me
fulfilling.
the link. I'll take a
I will
look.
do.
Yeah, send it to me. Yeah.
And
But
so,
one
yep,
final
sorry.
note, and then you can ask another question. You said yes, some additional questions. But the one thing I would say is that I think in the West, the man's position in marriage is pretty precarious and pretty delicate. Like the law sides with the woman, as you've been saying in many instances. And I think if you realize that, you select your counterparty very carefully and hope that everyone's going to get mad and fight in relationships. It's inevitable, but hope that she's the type that will consider all elements and downstream elements before she pulls the ripcord, and causes like irrevocable damage to something. Whereas I think, like, especially that's a problem with young people getting married. Like, I was older than my wife, but my wife was quite mature for her age, and I was 40 when I got married. I think the pressures on a young couple and the impulsiveness of young people, they'll just do reckless stuff. And they'll just think, well, screw that guy. I'm going to really show him. I'm going to kick him in the balls by doing X, Y, and Z. And then not realize like the downstream consequences of if you file a domestic violence claim or like breakup, then you think about, oh, that was not a good idea a year later. I don't think you can scrub those kind of things from the record, whatever. So you can cause like permanent damage to the child and everything by acting rashly without, it's all about being considered in one's actions. But obviously young people are less so than older people.
Yeah, and it's just a ripple effect because it affects like it's like uncles, aunties, grandparents, like everybody is affected by the destruction of the family home because essentially marriage is two people coming together. And the reason why you have marriage isn't for the happiness of the individuals in the marriage, it's for children. Children,
Yeah.
marriage is there as a union for children. And so, you know, and again, it's I could talk a bit about this for a while, but we're down to the last 5 minutes
There we
and
go.
such.
Zoom is going to kick us
Yeah.
off.
So is there anything that you would like to plug or anything that you'd like to talk about in this
Oh,
last 5 minutes?
do you put links under your
Yeah.
thing?
I can put anything you
Yeah,
like there.
I have two thanks again for having me on, Doug. I have two products. At pauljanka.com is my old membership site. That'll teach you everything about meeting, chatting up, sleeping with women, dating multiple attractive women. If you're just trying to figure out how to get girls on the roster and date them and spice up your sex life, that's what you want to, that's the product you want to look into. And my other product is called No Man Left Behind. Well, it's under a No Man Left Behind brand. It's called Playboy to Papa, and that's, I made that when I was older, and that's sort of opening the kimono on marriage. I talk about the things you need to do to prepare for marriage or a long-term relationship, potentially with children, what it looks like from the inside, the steps to think about before you get to the altar, what fatherhood. I made it when my daughter was quite young, but like my real-time experiences with being a parent and the difficulties of that. What it's basically, for a guy who's interested in having a family and settling down but is nervous or doesn't know what it looks like on the inside, like I open the door on that, so it's quite revealing. And those are the two products. So
And do you still do decision note theory?
not as much. I just do coaching. But yes, that was we'll bring that back at some point. But I do coach men. That's kind of separately. I mean, I'll leave my email on there too, paul@playboytopapa.com. And if guys want to have an hour coaching session, a lot of guys like to just talk through stuff with me and say like, what do you think of this plan? And then we discuss it. I'm not to say one way is better than the other, just to say like, have you thought of this? Have you thought
Options, yeah. So that you have the freedom to choose.
And it's, a lot of guys find it helpful. I feel quite honored because a lot of men call me up before they're about to propose, and they're like, I'm here are my thoughts for, here are my thoughts against. Do I do it? Do I cut fish? Do I cut bait and pull the plug? And we just talk about it. And so I mean, that's a huge life decision. So I feel honored men want to discuss it with me, you know. So that's mostly what I do nowadays with that business.
No, well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. Any links, just like send them in the email and I'll pin them in the comment section or put them in the description box or whatever. If you ever want to talk again, just let us know. I'll send you the links to the Mackenzie friend because I can imagine that being a great thing for you to do, but it's whether you want to do it or not. But it's an option, like you just said, it's an option. And yeah, I just really appreciate you. And I think you've been inspiring to a lot of people that you've coached personally and through the internet inadvertently. So yeah, thank you for being vulnerable and putting all your personal life out there for people to be able to judge and criticize and, you know, to be able to learn from. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, Doug. When we get together someday, you'll show me a few of your old magic tricks, huh? Someday, you'll show me a few of your old magic tricks, huh? I'm still
whenever you've got a party,
that, so.
whenever you got a party, just come. I'll come and do it for free for you, mate. You know,
yeah, you know, my daughter's 5. In a few years, we'll bring you down if you still have all your gear and your gimmicks, and we'll charge you we'll pay you your standard rate, and you'll do a little session. That'd be fun.
Whatever you want, mate. No worries. That sounds great.
All right, Doug. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
You're the best, mate. All the best.
All right.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.